Hello everyone, welcome to my channel for today's new video. Chicago Fire kicked off the One Chicago franchise in 2012, and since then, NBC has aired 3 spin-offs, but they should add another one to the list revolving around Matt Casey, Jess Spencer, and Sylvie Brett, Kara Kilmer. Spencer was a part of the original main cast of Chicago Fire in 2012 and was a series regular until he exited the procedural drama in Season 10. Meanwhile, Kilmer joined the show during the Season 3 premiere and was a main cast member until she left in Season 12. Given how their stories ended, a spin-off starring Casey and Brett is feasible. Casey and Brett rode off into the sunset at the end of Chicago Fire Season 12. Episode 6. The two began dating in Season 9, but broke up when Casey moved to Portland, Oregon. Their relationship wasn't built to withstand the long distance. Consequently, Casey and Brett went their separate ways, but it soon became clear that, despite their breakup, the couple was meant to be together. The perfect opportunity to make Casey and Brett's endgame was when Kilmer announced she was leaving Chicago Fire in Season 12, opening the door for Casey and Brett to get married and live together in Oregon. Kara Kilmer's Chicago Fire exit was ultimately bittersweet, as it meant Casey and Brett could finally be together, but at the cost of losing the two characters on the show. As separate characters, Casey and Brett were both beloved by fans. However, together, many viewers enjoyed their relationship and were rooting for it before they officially started dating. It would be quite disappointing if Chicago Fire fans never got to see Casey and Brett again, and a spin-off could change that. A Brett and Casey Chicago Fire spin-off would be quite exciting, especially after their wedding in Season 12. The fan-favorite characters would be back on the small screen as husband and wife, which should entice many. Plus, given that the theoretical Chicago Fire spin-off would revolve solely around Brett and Casey, the show could spend much more time on their story and developing their relationship. All 4 shows in the One Chicago universe have been set in Chicago, Illinois, and for good reason, as the city is in the franchise's name. However, after a combined total of 33 seasons and 662 episodes, it might be time for NBC to broaden the franchise's horizon, and who better usher in a new era of One Chicago than Brett and Casey? Their adventures in Portland, Oregon, as a married couple would certainly introduce something new to the fictional universe. Taking the One Chicago franchise to the West Coast would certainly spice things up. Each established TV show, Chicago Fire, Chicago PD, and Chicago Med, is in the double digits regarding their season count. The longer a series goes on, the easier it is for it to get old, and that's what's happening to One Chicago. So, if the network wants to infuse an air of freshness into the franchise, NBC would be wise to develop a spin-off that takes place outside the Windy City and in Portland. As mentioned above, the last time the audience saw Brett and Casey was when they got married in Chicago Fire Season 12. Episode 6. Port in the Storm. They were starting a new journey together, one that is worth exploring. Brett and her newly adopted baby daughter, Julia, moved to Portland to be with Casey, who was taking care of Andy Darden's 2 sons. They were building a family together, and, unfortunately, viewers won't get to see that happen since neither is on Chicago Fire anymore, but a spin-off could change that. Casey and Brett have blended their families and live in a city far away from Chicago. It's easy to see the story potential there, as a Chicago Fire spin-off starring Casey and Brett could explore the countless challenges they will face. How does Brett adapt to living in Portland? Can Casey and Brett pick up where they left off with ease? Will Brett get along with the Darden boys? Will Brett start working as a paramedic at Casey's fire station? Will Casey and Brett ever return to Chicago? All of these gripping questions can be answered with a spin-off. Casey's Chicago Fire Season 11 story hints at exciting future career opportunities. Aside from the inevitable relationship drama, a Chicago Fire spin-off featuring Casey and Brett could further explore bigger career opportunities for them, but especially for Casey. Casey returned near the end of Chicago Fire Season 11 because he was asked to join a counterterrorism task force. He traveled to his old city for a conference and, unknowingly, to rekindle his and Brett's relationship. If NBC were to continue Jess Spencer's character's story via a spin-off, the show could feature Casey moving up in his fire career and pursuing different avenues following his time on the counterterrorism task force. It's unclear where Casey would go next in his career. However, it would be interesting to see him ponder over the possibilities, like becoming a battalion chief. The same thing can be said about Kara Kilmer's character. Brett left Chicago Fire as the paramedic in charge of Ambulance 61, and perhaps she could try to advance further in her career in Portland, Oregon. Unfortunately, viewers will never know unless Casey and Brett return to the One Chicago universe. While Casey and Brett are, assumingly, living their best married life on the West Coast, Kelly Severide and Stella Kidd are struggling to keep their marriage afloat in the Chicago Fire. The two technically ended on good terms during the Season 12 final. However, when Severide suggested they start building a family, Stella looked taken aback, and not in a good way. That moment, mixed with Severide's OFI drama, spells bad news for the couple in Chicago Fire Season 13. Perhaps a return to Casey and Brett could make up for Severide and Stella's seemingly inevitable doom. If one were to think about Chicago Fire's relationships, Severide and Stella's, and Casey and Brett's would likely be the first to come to mind. They are two of the most established, strongest couples with large fan bases. So, if one of them ends, and the other has exited the NBC procedural drama, the One Chicago franchise could be in trouble. But a return to Casey and Brett via a spin-off could make up for Severide and Stella's theoretical breakup. Each One Chicago TV show features a different public service in Chicago, Illinois. However, if Casey and Brett were to headline their own spin-off, that would completely rewrite the NBC franchise's rules, which is a good thing. Instead of introducing a new group of characters working for a new public service in Chicago, a Casey and Brett spin-off would feature established characters working in a field that is already highlighted in the Chicago Fire in Portland, Oregon. Portland Fire would bring viewers back to the world of fire, but it would take place on the opposite side of the country. The spin-off would be unlike anything NBC has ever released in the One Chicago universe, which would be quite exciting. Plus, a Casey and Brett spin-off would be different regarding the cast. Casey and Brett would be leading the cast of the theoretical spin-off, while the other One Chicago TV shows contain an ensemble cast. However, Jess Spencer and Kara Kilmer would undoubtedly be the most important actors in the series. In the past couple of seasons, viewers have had to say goodbye to one too many One Chicago stars. Original Chicago Med cast member Nick Gelfus, Dr. Will Halstead, exited the series after Season 8, and Dominic Raines, Dr. Crockett Marcel, is following him ahead of the Season 10 premiere. Jess Lee Soffer, Jay Halstead, and Tracy Spiridakos, Haley Upton, left Chicago PD in back-to-back seasons, undoubtedly leaving a hole in the police procedurals cast. Meanwhile, Chicago Fire Season 12 had 4 cast exits alone, including Kilmer and Eamon Walker as Chief Bowden. Of course, it's always sad to see actors and actresses leave TV shows, even though it's quite common in the entertainment business. However, Casey and Brett, who are two fan-favorite One Chicago characters, returning to the universe via a spin-off would bring some positivity back to the franchise. It's what the people want, after all. Only time will tell if NBC acts on this great opportunity of a Casey and Brett Chicago Fire spin-off, but it would be a welcome surprise after all the cast exits.